The CPS investigator kept her voice calm when she looked down at my daughter and asked, "Sweetheart, can you tell me what happens when Mommy gets angry?" And my 6-year-old repeated the sentence exactly the way someone repeats a line from a school play. She locks me in my room and forgets to feed me sometimes. My mother-in-law smiled before she could stop herself. Welcome back to BetrayalLedger, where family secrets never stay buried for long. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe and join the family, because this story is one of the wildest ones we've ever told. Let's get into it. My name is Claire Bennett. I am 34 years old, and my mother-in-law tried to destroy my life because I refused to let her control my daughter anymore. The investigator's name was Denise Harper, mid-50s, gray wool coat damp from the rain outside. The kind of woman who noticed things without looking like she was paying attention. I remember the smell in the room most clearly. Coffee gone cold, wet boots near the front door, tomato soup simmering slowly on the stove. Because my daughter Emily had a cough that week and barely wanted to eat anything else. Denise crouched slightly so she could speak eye to eye with Emily. "And when did your mommy stop feeding you?" she asked softly. Emily froze. Not because she was scared of me, because she was trying to remember the script. I need you to understand something about children, especially 6-year-olds. They can lie, but they lie badly when adults give them details that don't belong to them. Emily looked toward my mother-in-law for half a second. That was all Denise needed. "She forgets dinner when she drinks wine," Emily said quietly. I didn't even drink wine. My mother-in-law, Judith, drank Chardonnay every single night at exactly 7:30 out of a giant crystal glass. She called her evening reward. And Denise noticed that too. The room changed after that, subtly, like pressure dropping before a storm. Judith crossed her legs carefully on my couch and folded her hands in her lap, wearing a pale blue cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. She had spent years cultivating the image of a generous church-going grandmother from Fairfield County. Soft voice, pearls, lemon bars at bake sales, but there was something underneath it. Something metallic. I had known it since the day I married her son. That Tuesday morning in October, she thought she had finally won. 6 months before, my husband Daniel and I had told Judith she could no longer pick Emily up from school alone. That decision did not come from nowhere. Emily had started having panic attacks before visits with her grandmother. Tiny ones at first, stomach aches, crying in the car, fingernails bitten down to the skin. One night I asked her why, and she whispered, "Grandma says you might go away if I don't behave." I felt cold all over when she said it. The refrigerator hummed behind us. Rain tapped against the kitchen window over the sink. Emily sat there in dinosaur pajamas holding half a grilled cheese sandwich like she was confessing something criminal. I asked what she meant. Emily shrugged the helpless way children do when they know something is wrong, but don't have language big enough for it. She says judges take little girls away from difficult mothers. That was the beginning. Daniel didn't want to believe it at first. Judith had spent his entire life manipulating situations so gently that people thanked her afterward. She never yelled. That was the terrifying part. She moved through conflict like someone laying down silk scarves over broken glass. When Daniel confronted her, she laughed softly and claimed Emily misunderstood a conversation about a television show. Then she cried. Then she told Daniel I had always seemed emotionally unstable. 3 days later, she mailed him articles about borderline personality disorder. What I didn't know yet was that she had already started preparing for something much bigger. The CPS report came in on a Monday morning at 7:43. Neglect, emotional abuse, possible alcohol dependency. The anonymous caller claimed my daughter was frequently locked inside her bedroom. While I slept through the afternoons, I worked remotely for a medical billing company from home. My office overlooked the backyard swing set. Half my day was spent answering emails while Emily colored beside me at the dining table. None of it made sense. But false reports do not need to make sense immediately. They only need to create doubt. By noon, 2 neighbors had seen the CPS vehicle outside my house. One of them stopped waving to me after that week. That part hurt more than I expected. Denise conducted the initial inspection thoroughly. Clean pantry, full refrigerator, Emily's medical records, school attendance, bruises checked carefully under warm bathroom light while Emily complained about missing cartoons. Everything should have ended there. But Judith kept inserting herself, calling Denise directly, sending helpful documentation, offering to provide temporary housing for Emily if Claire becomes overwhelmed. That phrase, overwhelmed, she used it constantly, as if motherhood was a disease she was diagnosing in me. 2 weeks later, Denise requested a formal follow-up interview with Emily present. Judith arrived 20 minutes. The early carrying store-bought muffins arranged on ceramic plates she brought herself. Like she was hosting brunch instead of trying to dismantle my family. Daniel sat beside me on the couch, exhausted and pale from weeks of tension. We barely slept by then. Every sound outside made me think another investigator was arriving. Denise turned on her body camera before entering the house. At the time, I barely noticed. That camera saved my life. The interview started normally enough. Emily showed Denise her art supplies. Her stuffed rabbit named Clover, the blanket fort Daniel built in the den. Then Denise asked if she could speak to Emily, alone for a few minutes at the dining table. Judith volunteered to stay nearby for emotional support. Denise allowed it. Another thing she was testing. Emily climbed into the chair, swinging her small legs, nervously, while Judith sat 3 feet away, smiling too hard. "What happens when Mommy gets upset?" Denise asked. And Emily delivered the rehearsed lines, almost perfectly, but children cannot memorize emotion, only words. Denise asked one question Judith had not prepared for. "What does Mommy say before she locks you in your room?" Emily blinked. Long pause. Then she answered carefully. "She says she needs her medicine and grown-up juice." Judith inhaled sharply beside her, because that line belonged to Judith herself. I saw Denise notice it instantly. The investigator's face did not change, but her pen stopped moving. "Grown-up juice?" Denise repeated gently. Emily nodded. "The yellow wine Grandma drinks." Silence. I could actually hear the soup bubbling softly in the kitchen. Then Denise asked, "Does Mommy drink yellow wine?" Emily frowned. "No, Grandma does." Judith interrupted immediately. "She's confused. Poor thing's been under tremendous stress lately. Too fast. Way too fast." Denise thanked Emily and asked if she wanted stickers from her bag. The second Emily skipped away, Denise stood up. And then everything fell apart for Judith in under 4 minutes. Denise asked her calmly, "Mrs. Bennett, can you explain why Emily appears to be describing your behavior instead of Claire's?" Judith smiled, not nervous, offended. "I think children absorb all kinds of things. Claire has always struggled with emotional regulation." Denise nodded slowly. "And did you coach Emily before today's interview?" "No, of course not." "Did you discuss specific phrases involving wine, locked rooms, or forgetting meals?" "Absolutely not." Then Denise said the sentence that changed everything. "Because my body camera recorded your conversation with Emily on the porch before I entered the house." Judith stopped breathing for a second. I watched it happen. Tiny freeze, eyes widening just slightly. Denise continued calmly. "You instructed Emily to remember that. Mommy drinks the yellow stuff and gets sleepy." Daniel turned toward his mother slowly, like he no longer recognized her. Judith recovered fast. "I'll give her that." She laughed lightly and said she had only been trying to help Emily feel comfortable. But Denise already knew. You could see it in the room. The illusion collapsing in real time. "What concerns me," Denise said carefully, "is that a child appears to have been pressured into making false neglect allegations." Daniel stood up then. My husband rarely raised his voice. He grew up in a house where emotions were treated like biohazards. But that day he looked at Judith and said, "Did you use my daughter to go after my wife?" Judith's face hardened instantly. No softness anymore. No church lady performance. Just anger. "She was already turning Emily against this family," Judith snapped. Someone had to intervene. I remember Emily standing in the hallway clutching her stuffed rabbit while hearing all of this. I remember the fear on her face. Not fear of me, fear of disappointing adults. That realization still makes me sick. Denise ended the interview immediately after that. She asked Judith to leave the property. Judith refused at first. Then Denise mentioned obstruction and falsifying statements during an active child welfare investigation. That did it. Judith grabbed her handbag so violently that one of her pearl earrings snapped loose and rolled under the coffee table. She didn't even look for it. Before leaving, she stared directly at me and said, "You think you've won something here?" I said nothing, because women like Judith feed on reaction. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the framed family photos in the hallway. And suddenly the house felt quiet for the first time in months. The official case closed 8 days later. Unfounded allegations, no evidence of neglect, recommendations noted regarding inappropriate coaching by extended family members. The wording was clinical, cold. But I cried anyway when I read it. Not dramatic crying, just exhaustion, leaking out slowly while sitting at my kitchen counter at 2 a.m. with a mug of tea, gone cold between my hands. Daniel found me there, and for the first time since this started, he admitted something I think he had spent his entire life avoiding. "She used to do this to my father. he said quietly. I looked up at him. He stared out the dark kitchen window while speaking. If she thought he was getting too independent, she'd create emergencies. Health scares, financial panic, anything to pull him back. The refrigerator hummed softly again. Same sound as the night Emily confessed what Judith had been saying to her. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. I think I spent 37 years believing manipulation was the same thing as love. That sentence broke my heart more than everything else combined, because suddenly I understood the real damage Judith had done. Not just to me, to him, to Emily, to everyone around her. 3 weeks later, we filed for a restraining order regarding contact with Emily. Judith contested it immediately. Of course she did. At the hearing, she arrived wearing cream-colored wool and carrying a leather Bible. Her attorney described her as a devoted grandmother, unfairly alienated by an unstable daughter-in-law. Standard strategy, paint the woman emotional, paint the older woman nurturing. But Denise testified, and body camera footage does not care about charm. The courtroom was freezing cold that morning. Old radiator heat clanking through the walls. Wet umbrellas lined near the entrance because freezing rain had coated most of Hartford overnight. Denise described the porch conversation calmly and precisely. Then the footage played. Judith's voice filled the courtroom speakers. Remember what Grandma told you? Mommy drinks the yellow stuff and sleeps all day sometimes. Hearing it out loud made my stomach twist. Emily sounded so small answering her. The judge watched the video twice. Judith stopped making eye contact after the second viewing. We were granted the order that afternoon. Limited supervised contact only. No unscheduled communication. No discussions involving custody, courts, or parental fitness around Emily. It wasn't total victory, but it was safety. And sometimes safety is the closest thing to peace families like ours ever get. The hardest part came afterward. Not the legal process, not the gossip. Emily blamed herself for months. Children think they caused storms, simply because they stood nearby when thunder started. One night she crawled into my lap while I folded laundry and whispered, Grandma said families break if little girls tell the truth wrong. I held her so tightly she complained I was squeezing. Then I told her something I wish someone had told Daniel when he was small. Good adults never ask children to carry adult secrets, especially ugly ones, especially dangerous ones. That became our rule afterward. No secrets that make your stomach hurt. No grown-up games pretending to be honesty. No love that requires fear to survive. A year later, things look normal from the outside. Emily is 7 now. She plays soccer badly but enthusiastically. Daniel switched jobs and sleeps better than he used to. We moved to a quieter neighborhood outside Portland where nobody knows our history. Sometimes I still catch myself flinching when unknown cars stop near the house. Trauma is strange that way. It leaves fingerprints on ordinary moments, but we're okay. Better than okay, actually. Last Christmas, Emily helped me bake cinnamon cookies, while snow covered the backyard in thick white silence. The kitchen smelled like butter and vanilla and warmth. At one point, she looked up at me and asked, Mommy, are investigators always scary? I thought about Denise. Her careful eyes, her patience, the body camera quietly recording while Judith believed she was the smartest person in the room, and I said, no. Sometimes they're the reason people finally tell the truth. Emily nodded seriously like she was storing that away forever. Then she handed me a cookie shaped, vaguely like a dinosaur, and announced it was missing a leg because life is hard sometimes. I laughed so hard I nearly cried. And maybe that sounds small after everything, but if you've ever lived with someone who turns love into control, you understand this already. Peace does not arrive dramatically. It arrives quietly, in safe kitchens, in sleeping children, in the absence of fear, and sometimes in 4 minutes of body camera footage that finally forces everyone to stop pretending.